We have some breaking news to tell you about. We are able to report that FBI Director Kash Patel is in, quote, panic mode. We have that brand new reporting breaking moments ago from our colleagues Carol Lenig and Ken Delanian. It's about the turmoil inside the FBI right now after a string of deeply embarrassing and rather alarming stories about Kash Patel and his tenure as the head of the country's top law enforcement agency. From that new reporting, quote,
dozens of remaining officials have been subjected to polygraph exams to test their loyalty. My understanding is that approximately 40 officials have been asked to sit for a polygraph during your administration, and several have been asked whether they have ever made negative comments about you. Director Patel, FBI agents pledge their loyalty to the Constitution of the United States, not you personally. What is the basis for requiring polygraph exams of your workforce and asking them if they've made negative comments about you?
Kash Patel has ordered the polygraphing of more than 24 former and current members of his security detail and other staff, and has been described as in panic mode to save his job and find leakers among his team. That is according to two people briefed on the development. Kash Patel has walled himself off from some senior bureau leaders this week in the wake of multiple media reports that raised red flags about his leadership. A spokesperson for the FBI declined to comment about the polygraph tests, but he denied that Kash Patel was walled off from senior staff at the FBI.
For instance, Mr. Bongino called the placement of pipe bombs outside the DNC and RNC headquarters on January 6, quote, an inside job, and went on to say this was a setup. I have zero doubt, and whoever goes into the FBI, you better get an answer about why. Director Patel, you and Deputy Director Bongino are now leading the FBI. What is the evidence to suggest the pipe bombs placed outside of the DNC and RNC on January 6 were an inside job?
As you all know now, early this morning, Brian Cole Jr. was arrested and charged with placing the pipe bombs at the RNC and the DNC on January 5th, 2021. He has been charged with violating 18 U.S.C. 844, which is use of an explosive device. This investigation is ongoing. As we speak, search warrants are being executed, and there could be more charges to come. I'm going to let our U.S. Attorney discuss that shortly.
Did you read the story about the termination of the project in Baltimore?
Which story?
764 Group, the Baltimore agents were investigating. Are you familiar with that?
No, sir.
But apparently that this group, 764, a nihilistic, violent extremist group, seeks to blackmail children to perform vile acts on a camera, under investigation by Baltimore, which was terminated by you.
The FBI is warning that this new network has a potential national security implication, but also in case after case, directly reaching into American homes, targeting teens and their families. Its name, 764.
Hello. I have placed 2 explosives inside of Rockville High School, okay? And if they fail to detonate, I'm just going to shoot every kid I see, okay?
He was doing these threats with her knowledge and with some of her input.
They will encourage them sometimes to commit suicide. They will encourage them to do cutting. They will encourage them to harm their pets.
They're using basically psychological warfare on children.
That's right. They gain the trust, and then they continue to build that trust to the point where they have power and the ability to blackmail the child, basically.
When this hearing happened, 3 questions were asked directly, and none of them got a straight answer. Was FBI Director Patel personally polygraphing his own agents about their loyalty to him? Did his deputy director have any actual evidence for a claim he made publicly about the January 6 pipe bombs? And why was a child exploitation investigation in Baltimore reportedly shut down under his leadership? What you're about to hear are the answers Patel gave in that room. And stay with us, because later in this video we're bringing you the updates on exactly what's happened with all 3 of these stories since. What came next changes how you'll look back at some of these answers. This exchange moves through 6 distinct threads in just over 9 minutes. Loyalty polygraphs and personal alerts among his senior team, the Epstein records and an unsigned memo, a direct confrontation over his deputy director's conspiracy claim, 2 decorated veterans terminated without stated cause, the Baltimore case involving children, and finally a dispute over FBI hiring standards. Watch closely how the pattern repeats across nearly every one of these. A specific, documented question, met with a pivot to a favorable statistic or a promise that answers are coming later. Let's go through exactly what was asked, and exactly how Patel answered it, before we get to what's happened since.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, in addition to the extensive purge of nonpartisan career FBI official reports indicate that dozens of remaining officials have been subjected to polygraph exams to test their loyalty. My understanding is that approximately 40 officials have been asked to sit for a polygraph during your administration, and several have been asked whether they have ever made negative comments about you. Director Patel, FBI agents pledge their loyalty to the Constitution of the United States, not you personally. What is the basis for requiring polygraph exams of your workforce and asking them if they've made negative comments about you?
I don't know what reports you're referring to, Ranking Member, and I reject any reporting that has false information in it, so I'm not going to respond to that. As far as polygraphs go, generally they are always and always have been utilized at the FBI to track down those that leak sensitive information and have unauthorized disclosures to the media, and we will continue to use them to ensure the integrity of the FBI.
Did any individual on your senior executive team, the director's advisory team, or who serve in the positions on the 7th floor receive disqualifying alerts on their polygraphs?
Senator, I'm not going to get into the personnel discussions that were had on a polygraph. Those are private discussions, and many of them relate to ongoing investigations.
Did you or Attorney General Bondi provide any individual with a waiver so they could remain employed after they received disqualifying alerts on their polygraphs?
I'll have to get back to you.
You don't remember that?
No, sir. My priority is protecting the American public, not getting into the weeds of polygraphs.
And to have a decent memory when you come before a committee.
I'm happy to talk about all the good work the men and women of the FBI are doing, including provided the lowest crime rate in American history. If you want to talk about how to protect the citizens, Chicago has seen a 30% reduction in its murder rate because of the men and women of the FBI.
You take credit for that?
I'll happily do that.
You
The
take
interagency partners and the men and women of the Chicago PD have never been more
include
powerful.
local law enforcement, please.
Have you ever seen my testimony across this country where I always lead with our interagency partnerships with state and local law enforcement? It is the pillar of what I am doing. And on the 7th floor, for the first time in FBI history, I have installed police officers and sheriffs right on my 7th floor to report to us every day what's going around the country on the street level, because that is a priority of the FBI and is the only way we are going to work. I don't take credit for anything, but I will defend the men and women of the FBI and the cops that help us get it done.
You should.
With Kash Patel heading the FBI, the agency is using more lie detectors on its own agents. According to the New York Times, sources say dozens of officials have been polygraphed and asked if they've said anything negative about Patel. Typically, polygraph tests are used on employees who might have betrayed the country or who can't be trusted with sensitive information. Former Bureau officials told the Times the use of the polygraph and nature of the questioning are part of a broader crackdown on news leaks, saying it's politically charged and in pursuit of loyalty, that disagreements or disparages could cost people their jobs.
This opening stretch is worth watching in full because it's really two separate confrontations stitched together. And the way Patel handles the transition between them tells you a lot about his strategy for the rest of the hearing. It starts with a serious, specific allegation. The senator says roughly 40 FBI officials have been required to sit for polygraph exams under Patel's leadership, and that some of them were specifically asked whether they'd ever made negative comments about Patel himself. Not about the country, not about the Constitution, about him personally. The senator frames this sharply, reminding Patel that FBI agents swear loyalty to the Constitution, not to any individual director, and asks what possible basis there could be for testing employees on personal loyalty like that. Patel's response is a flat rejection of the premise. He says he doesn't recognize the reporting being cited and calls it false, then pivots to a general defense of polygraphs as a standard tool for catching leaks and unauthorized disclosures. The senator doesn't let it go easily. He follows up with something more pointed. Did anyone on Patel's own senior team, the people closest to him, on what's referred to as the 7th floor, actually fail their polygraph? Receive what's called a disqualifying alert? Patel declines to discuss it, citing personnel privacy and ongoing investigations. Pushed further on whether he or Attorney General Bondi personally issued waivers to keep someone employed despite failing, Patel says he'll have to get back to the senator, and when asked directly if he simply doesn't remember, he says no, and adds that his priority is protecting the public, not getting into the weeds of polygraph details. That line is the hinge of the whole segment, because Patel immediately uses it to change the subject entirely. He pivots to what he calls the lowest crime rate in American history, and specifically a 30% reduction in Chicago's murder rate. crediting FBI partnerships with local law enforcement. It's a smooth, confident redirect away from a question he never actually answered, and it sets the tone for how he handles pressure throughout the rest of this hearing. Deflect and pivot to a favorable statistic.
Director Patel, to your knowledge, did a whistleblower ever make a disclosure to Attorney General Bondi indicating that the New York field office was withholding Epstein-related records?
I'm not familiar with that whistleblower.
You know that there was such a whistleblower?
I'm not familiar with that whistleblower.
In response to the blowback she received, Attorney General Bondi also pushed the FBI to review approximately 100,000 Epstein-related records on an arbitrarily short deadline in March, and the FBI was directed to flag any documents that mentioned President Trump. Nothing came of that review until July, when DOJ and FBI released an unsigned memorandum stating there is no incriminating client list. Why was this July 7th memorandum unsigned?
Would you prefer I've used AutoPen?
Well, why was it unsigned?
The memorandum had the insignia of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And in our effort to secure transparency for the American people, because the 3 prior administrations had not done so, we conducted an exhaustive search of everything related to the Epstein cases, and we produced what was legally and permissibly able to be produced to Congress and the American public.
So
and there's a congressional subpoena, and we're continuing to do so.
Did you personally direct that investigation so that you would sign such a...
Did I personally direct what investigation?
Of the Epstein records for any reference to President Trump?
Again, you are citing reporting that I think is baseless. We conducted an investigation of the Epstein case files pursuant to the direction of the President of the administration to provide all credible information, and we are working with Congress pursuant to a congressional subpoena to turn over all the documents we can. All individuals.
Who at DOJ and FBI was responsible for its drafting and conclusions?
Many individuals at the Department of Justice and the FBI are responsible.
There was no lead person?
The Attorney General leads the Department of Justice, and I lead the FBI.
So the Attorney General was responsible for that?
The Attorney General leads the Department of Justice.
This section is dense with specific, checkable claims, and it's worth slowing down for because it moves through 3 distinct sub-questions that build on each other. The senator opens by asking whether a whistleblower ever told Attorney General Bondi that the FBI's New York field office was withholding Epstein-related records. Patel says he isn't familiar with that whistleblower, and when the senator rephrases, essentially confirming there was such a person, Patel repeats the identical answer word for word, which is itself worth noticing as a pattern. From there, the senator lays out a specific timeline. After that alleged disclosure, Bondi reportedly pushed the FBI to review around 100,000 Epstein-related records on a tight March deadline, with instructions to flag anything mentioning President Trump specifically. Nothing publicly came of that review, the senator says, until July, when DOJ and FBI jointly released an unsigned memo stating there was no incriminating client list. The senator's question is pointed and almost procedural. Why was that memorandum unsigned? Patel responds somewhat sharply, asking if the senator would have preferred an AutoPen signature, before explaining that the document carried the official insignia of both agencies and represented, in his framing, an unprecedented level of transparency compared to 3 prior administrations. The senator pushes on accountability directly. Did Patel personally direct that specific review of Epstein records for Trump references? Patel calls the premise baseless, describing the investigation as conducted under presidential direction to provide all credible information, in cooperation with a congressional subpoena. Asked who specifically at DOJ or FBI was responsible for drafting the memo's conclusions, Patel says many individuals share that responsibility. There was no single lead person. When pressed on who's actually accountable, his answer narrows to the org chart itself. Bondi leads DOJ, he leads the FBI, so accountability sits with the Attorney General. It's a technically true answer that manages to name a title rather than a person.
Director Patel, much like you, Deputy Director Dan Bongino was a conspiracy theorist who built a lucrative career making inflammatory and unsubstantiated statements about the FBI that would be disqualifying in any administration that cared about nonpartisan law enforcement. For instance, Mr. Bongino called the placement of pipe bombs outside the DNC and RNC headquarters on January 6, quote, an inside job, and went on to say this was a setup. I have zero doubt, and whoever goes into the FBI, you better get an answer about why. Director Patel, you and Deputy Director Bongino are now leading the FBI. What is the evidence to suggest the pipe bombs placed outside of the DNC and RNC on January 6 were an inside job?
I appreciate the opportunity to discuss Director Bongino's mine record. So many on this committee and the media jettison our 31 years of public service.
Can you answer the question, sir?
I'm answering the question. You're questioning the integrity of the Deputy Director of the FBI and mine.
If you found
and
any
I'm going to
evidence.
answer the question.
I'm
The pipe
asking-
bomb investigation is ongoing, and I'm not going to discuss
Ongoing?
the details of the pipe bomb investigation. Mr. Bongino was a Secret Service agent for 15 years, a police officer for 5. I served this country in multiple administrations for 16 years. We were also private citizens, and we are now back in government service. And what we have the ability to do is set aside our personal beliefs to deliver the mission of justice for this country, and we're doing it day in and day out. And I find it disgusting that everyone and anyone would jettison our 31 years of combined experience that is now at the helm of the FBI, delivering historic results at historic speeds for the American people.
So you have no evidence?
I got a lot of evidence, and I'll give it to you when I can.
This is arguably the most personal and heated exchange in the entire hearing, and it's worth watching uninterrupted because you can hear the tone genuinely shift partway through. The senator opens by characterizing Deputy Director Dan Bongino as someone who built a career on inflammatory and unsubstantiated claims, specifically citing Bongino's public statement calling the placement of pipe bombs outside DNC and RNC headquarters on January 6th an inside job, with Bongino saying he had zero doubt and that whoever joined the FBI had better get answers about why. The senator asked Patel directly, as the person now leading the Bureau alongside Bongino, what actual evidence exists to support that specific claim. Patel doesn't answer the question directly. He pivots immediately to defending Bongino's record, and the senator interjects that Patel is now answering a different question than the one asked. Patel pushes back hard here, saying he is answering, and that the senator is questioning both Bongino's integrity and his own. He declines to discuss details of what he says is an ongoing pipe bomb investigation, then pivots to biography. Bongino's 15 years as a Secret Service agent, 5 as a police officer. His own 16 years across multiple administrations, framing both of them as public servants who set aside personal beliefs to do the job. He calls it disgusting that their combined experience would be dismissed. The senator, unmoved by the biographical detour, asks the direct follow-up again. So you have no evidence? Patel's answer is confident but nonspecific. He says he has plenty and will provide it when he can. The senator's closing line is dry and pointed. He says he's looking forward to it, making clear the evidence still hasn't actually been produced.
There's a New York Times story this morning about Chris Meyer. As I understand it, he was your personal pilot, at least for some period of time. Mr. Meyer has quite a record himself. Flew over 350 hours as an Air Force pilot on 3 aircraft types in Afghanistan. Mr. Jardina, another former FBI agent, a 1999 graduate of U.S. Naval Academy, commanded 100 Marines in combat during the 2003 invasion of Iraq, participated in several firefights, followed up with 2011 deployment as reservist to Afghanistan, where he interrogated senior Taliban officials. It appears that you terminated these 2 agents. Why?
I'm not going to get into personnel decisions that we made.
So you're not accountable for your decisions to take people who served our country so admirably and terminate them without any cause?
That's a one-sided story. Anyone that has been terminated from
so
the
tell
FBI,
your
generally
side
speaking,
of the story.
failed to meet the needs of the FBI and uphold their constitutional duties. And you providing a one-sided story from your perch is absolutely disgraceful because the men and women of the FBI deserve better. And your attack on the current leadership of the men and women of the FBI is equally disgraceful because now you're attacking the leaders that are our brave SACs in the field who are doing the job that this country needs.
It's disgraceful.
And we will continue to do it.
Excuse me, it's disgraceful when Mr. Meyer and Mr. Jardina, who served our country so well, are terminated apparently because of the rants of a broadcaster.
That is your opinion. It is not a fact.
This section works almost like a character study before it becomes a confrontation, and that structure is deliberate. The senator spends real time establishing exactly who these 2 men are before revealing what happened to them. He describes Chris Meyer, an Air Force pilot with over 350 combat flight hours across 3 aircraft types in Afghanistan, and another agent, a 1999 Naval Academy graduate, who commanded 100 Marines in combat during the 2003 Iraq invasion, saw multiple firefights, and later returned as a reservist to interrogate senior Taliban officials in Afghanistan. Only after laying out those records does the senator reveal both men were terminated under Patel's leadership and ask simply, why? Patel declines to discuss the specific personnel decisions. The senator doesn't accept that as sufficient, asking directly whether Patel considers himself accountable for terminating people with service records like these without stated cause. Patel reframes it as a one-sided story, saying anyone terminated from the FBI is welcome to share their own account, and that those let go generally fail to meet the Bureau's standards or uphold their constitutional duties. He calls presenting only one side of that story disgraceful, and pushes back on what he characterizes as an attack on current FBI leadership. The senator, still not satisfied, states plainly that it's disgraceful these two men appear to have been terminated because of commentary from a broadcaster, a specific, loaded claim. Patel's response is short and firm. That's an opinion, not a fact, drawing a clear line under the disagreement without resolving it.
Let me ask you to explain the situation in Baltimore, if you will. Did you read the story about the termination of the project in Baltimore?
Which story?
764 group?
Which story?
764 group, the Baltimore agents were investigating. Are you familiar with that?
No, sir.
Well, I'm not going to go into detail. It would take too long to do it. But apparently that this group, 764, a nihilistic, violent extremist group, seeks to blackmail children to perform vile acts on a camera under investigation by Baltimore, which was terminated by you. I'd like you to respond in writing, if you will, as to the circumstances of that termination.
Sure. Our operations against NVEs, as you're referring to, has been historically high, and we've taken down multiple NVE rings, including 764 rings, who are harming children and causing them to be mutilated and
Last question.
Suicide.
Can you explain why you are eliminating the requirements for a college degree for your agents?
I appreciate the opportunity to address that. You said in your opening statement, we are reducing the training requirements at Quantico. We are not. We are expanding them. You are referring to an 1811 crossover program because I believe the men and women of places like the DEA, the ATF, and the Marshal Service and the Secret Service who want to work at the FBI should deserve that opportunity in a shortened, abridged program, which we provided. We are also keeping the 18-week BFTC as is traditionally been held at the FBI. So we're not reducing any requirements. We are increasing those that we bring into the FBI.
Did you change any of the requirements on college degrees?
We are allowing police officers who have served for a number of years to come into the FBI who did not obtain the requisite college degree to apply to be federal agents because we feel they have the street-level experience we need to conduct this mission.
This is a short exchange, but it's arguably the most disturbing subject raised anywhere in the hearing, and it's worth watching for how quickly it moves from confusion to a genuinely alarming allegation. The senator asks if Patel is familiar with the termination of a specific Baltimore investigation into a group called 764. Patel initially seems unclear on which story is even being referenced, asking the senator to clarify. Once clarified, Patel says flatly that he isn't familiar with it. The senator, rather than pushing further live in the room, explains he won't go into full detail given time constraints, but describes 764 as a nihilistic, violent extremist group that allegedly blackmails children into performing harmful acts on camera, and states that the Baltimore investigation into this group was terminated under Patel's leadership. He asks Patel to respond in writing with the full circumstances. Patel's on-the-record response pivots to overall statistics rather than the specific case. He says FBI operations against nihilistic, violent extremist networks have been historically high, and that multiple 764 affiliated rings harming and mutilating children have in fact been taken down under his leadership. An answer that addresses the broader category without directly confirming or denying the specific Baltimore termination. Patel's on-the-record response pivots. Senator raised. The hearing closes on a comparatively technical note, but it's worth including in full because Patel directly disputes the premise of the question itself before answering it. The senator asks why college degree requirements are being eliminated for FBI agents. Patel pushes back immediately, saying training requirements at Quantico are actually being expanded, not reduced, and explains he's referring to what's called the 1811 crossover program, a shortened, bridge pathway for experienced law enforcement officers from agencies like the DEA, ATF, Marshal Service, and Secret Service who want to move into the FBI. He clarifies the traditional 18-week basic field training course remains fully intact for standard recruits, framing this as an expansion of who can join rather than a lowering of standards. Pressed specifically on whether college degree requirements themselves have changed, Patel confirms a narrower point. Police officers with sufficient years of service are now allowed to apply as federal agents even without a college degree. on the reasoning that their street-level experience provides exactly the kind of practical background the Bureau needs. With that clarification on the record, the senator yields, closing out the exchange.